actually, one of the things we want to do is we want to get a little bit deeper today. And so Diana Olsen is here. Let's give her a round of applause. I know, I'm so excited. And Diana Olsen, okay, so we got to go through the whole bio here. I love this because I have to say the whole thing. I know she's sighing at me right now. She's the founder of one of Canada's top growing companies. She successfully combined a worthwhile product, meaningful experience, and effective design into a brand that customers now recognize and value, known across this country. And you were on Dragon's Den, which is kind of cool. That takes a lot of guts. I'm sweating thinking about it. But we really wanted to dig into how you started your business, and maybe we can all learn a little bit from it. And I love that there's a latte machine going off in the background while we do this, because that's just Balzac's, is it? You don't even hear it anymore. Oh, time to start. Oh, and we all know this too, right? Right when we get ready? Is it your daughter? No, it's CIBC. We don't take bank calls after 6. We've all been there, done that. Well, and I want to let's give everybody a round of applause here. These are amazing women that have all come together. And one of the things we wanted to talk about was empowering women, empowering other business women. And when you started Balzac's, we're going to fast forward a little bit, it was about creating community. So talk to me a little bit about what it feels like to be in a room and to be able to talk about your journey with other women and how do you empower them?
Lots of questions. Yes, thank you for coming, everybody. So to be honest, when I started Balzac's, gender didn't really cross my mind. I don't know. I think I was kind of a tomboy anyways, and men never really intimidated me. I didn't feel like that I was being pushed in a direction. Like my father was also an entrepreneur, and he encouraged me to, like, all good parents, to follow your heart, and he encouraged me in business. He saw that he thought I do take after him very much compared to my other siblings, and he really encouraged me to start my own business, and he did help me in the beginning. And I think for me, it's funny because it wasn't until later in my career that I felt like some sort of oh, do we have a customer here? Hi, sorry. It's like that I felt like the man did. No. Sorry. No, that I felt like somehow my gender did affect some of the things that were going on in my business life. And that was more maybe in the last 15 years or so, when there was this sort of new wave of coffee shops opening. And they were essentially doing what I had done way back when, which is roasting their own coffee. And for whatever reason, it was like a really popular thing for guys to get into. Like there was a lot of guys doing cafes. You guys have another wonderful female entrepreneur here that does Smile Tiger, yeah. Yeah. So, but really there were a lot, and they kind of all hung out together, and they did like barista championships together. And I don't feel like they intentionally sort of avoided me or anything, but I didn't feel like I was among my peers. And I felt overlooked, and kind of would be like, oh, I'd like to go to that coffee event, and sort of had to invite myself. So that could have been a bit of gender. It could have been obviously age as well. But that was the only time that it really played into it sort of bothered me that I wasn't being treated equally. Yeah. I feel like sometimes with banks, when I went to borrow money, I felt like, I just knew other people at the same time that were approaching banks to borrow money, that were getting loans, and I actually had more money to put that. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to point any fingers or anything, because right now, like, the banks are great to us, and it took a while. They obviously are very protective of what they will do for businesses. But yeah, and I also did not purposely, when I hire someone, I'm never thinking about their gender. But it happens to be that the majority of women that work at Balzac's, or people that work at Balzac's, are women. I think it's 70% women. So I think it just resonated. So yeah, there's a lot of times where I look around and I'm like surrounded by women, and I love it. But it's not intentional. It's not, we're not excluding men. Although if we do have events like this, I would like to say, and we don't exclude men, but I think we should be allowed to do this. Like, I really do. I think, we need this time. There's something going on here, and we need to be able to speak openly and not feel like we're going to be judged, or and sometimes you need your sisters to support you. So yeah.
I was talking to another female entrepreneur today, and when you talked about the banks, she had the same thing. At the beginning, it was so hard, and then now they're throwing money at her because she's quite successful. And I find it really interesting. What do you think is that turning point? When did you know where things were no longer that struggle? I don't know. How many people are sort of in that zone right now where it's a bit of a struggle? There's quite a few entrepreneurs in here. And I guess I would put my hand up too. When do you know that you're into the fast lane?
It's been gradual. I don't think there was a turning point. It was very gradual. I mean, in the beginning, it was really hard to try and get help, support. Like you said, now, I turn it away because I don't want to grow the company all on debt. So. But it was gradual. I was always very careful to not borrow too much, only borrow what I needed, make my payments on time, sort of build a relationship with my bank. It's funny though, because you start with just your local bank, and they sort of I'm sure you know this. They intentionally don't want to build personal relationships in the beginning, because they kind of switch people around. And I could see their point of view. They have to say no to a lot of people, and that's hard, right? They can't. That's got to be a hard job. But now I'm into commercial banking, and I have a person that's on my account, happens to be a woman. She's just a big supporter. She's always checking in on us, and we bank with TD, by the way. They've been really good to us. But yeah, it was gradual, and you have to kind of prove yourself, and yeah.
So let's go back, because as you mentioned earlier, coffee got really trendy about 5, 6, 7 years ago. But you've been doing this for a few years before that. So what was it about coffee, and how did you start?
So I'm Norwegian, and my family is Norwegian. And coffee was a big part of our home growing up. The smell of coffee, my grandparents, whenever I think of them, I think of the smell of coffee, and lots of other great smells too, but coffee was huge. And we traveled, and I was one of the few people that actually knew where coffee came from, because nobody really knew that coffee comes from a tree. And I think now most people, and that it's the seed of a cherry, and that it gets roasted, and people didn't ask those questions back then. So I just had a keen interest in it, and I had traveled I was an au pair in France. I did my degree in French literature in university, and which really, there's not a lot of jobs out there for French literature degrees, but I was very into reading, and I was taking, English literature, and I thought, why don't I take French literature, because at least then I get to learn another language and I have something to use. So that's what I did, and I spent a lot of time in France. I went for 2 years and went to the Sorbonne and learned how to speak French. Please don't speak French to me tonight, though. I'm like so rusty. It does come back, but and I spent a lot of time in the Parisian, if you've been to Paris, these like amazing cafes, and there really was a feeling of a sense of like belonging in those cafes. Like you could go in, you could read a book, you could be by yourself, people would leave you alone. You just didn't feel, I just felt comfortable in those cafes, and it's fun to listen to, like you were saying, people are having business meetings. There's people in Paris, they're serving wine, so it's a little more jovial. You listen to the people up at the bar, but that was my happy place. So I thought I want to start my own business. I love coffee. I love the cafe culture, and at that time, in Vancouver, Starbucks was becoming very popular because they came down like the Pacific coast. I'm from Vancouver. And I wanted to do kind of like a Starbucks where they did teach people about coffee and the origins of coffee, and they, roasting and fresh roasted and all that. But I wanted to do it in a more authentic European kind of cafe, not like a North American fast foodie way, like with laminated counters. Like I've always used marble, and I've always used like beautiful tiles, because that's just what all the European cafes do. So now I try to, I try to pay homage to European cafes with the design and not recreate it, because I want the cafes also to feel modern and fresh and appeal to millennials. And so when we did the refresh here, we added some more modern things, so there's sort of a reference to European cafes, but they're kind of a universal theme. Brought a little bit of Australia in with the plants that are dying in the corner, but anyways. Yeah.
Water that later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm interested because I love your design sense. So how do you said you pay a bit of homage to some of the cafes that you've seen, but do you look through magazines? Are you on Pinterest? Are you a Pinterest addict like myself? Like, what is it?
Figure Pinterest.
No.
I can't figure Pinterest out. I think I'm not very tech. No. Yeah, I travel a lot. I would say Instagram now, but that's only very recent. I love going, like, my husband and I go on the weekend to the big antique market, like the big ones, and there's one up in Barrie, and there's one on Highway 6, Freelton, and I buy like all of these light fixtures that they look the same, but they're all slightly different. So I collect things. Yeah, I just kind of, I don't know what my creative process is, but yeah, exactly. And I want every cafe to be different, so, but still kind of be Balzac's, like recognizable. So you will see elements, like all of the menus are the same, and yeah, and I like the fact that tastes, like with our own homes and everything, and our fashion, it's evolving all the time. You never get sort of stop. You always, like, and then 5 years later, I'll go like, what was I thinking when I put these like green tiles up here? And then I'll replace them with whatever's inspiring me at that time. Yeah, so.
Well, that begs the question, what's your favorite location and why?
I can honestly say this is on my top 3. I love the space. I love the history of this building. As far as a business goes, it's a great location because, you know, the building itself is the energy in this building and like just all the tech and all that. It's a captive audience. I mean, we're very proud of what we do here, but probably if we didn't do all this, we'd still be very busy. But weekends is when this becomes more of a destination for people that aren't in the neighborhood. Yeah, but I love this space, and I'm proud of what we did in this space. And Stratford, if you've been to our Stratford Cafe, so we just did a refresh there after 20-something years. It was actually the second refresh over that period, but yeah, I would recommend checking that one out. It turned out really nice. It's kind of an even newer evolution of our design. And then in Toronto, the Powerhouse Cafe, that's our latest cafe. Again, it was sort of a beautiful, old, historic. It used to be a General Electric power plant, and the landlord of the owner of the building, he just did such a great job preserving all the great features, and he handpicked us, which was great. Same with this company, the owner of the tannery handpicked us. So yeah, that's a real great. I don't know. It's a compliment, I guess, to Balzac's when we get the owners, the landlords or representatives reaching out to us because they see that space needs a Balzac's as opposed to a Starbucks, or no offense to them, but like they want something more unique and that celebrates the history of the building. And yeah.
That's interesting to me because I always wondered how you got this location. And so when you are out, like, because you've now expanded, how many locations do you have now? 14 locations. And so, yeah, that's 4 more locations on the go. I mean, a round of applause. That's pretty incredible. Yeah, that's incredible. So how do you decide when you're ready to grow? And I mean, obviously it takes capital to do that. You have to find the location is so important. So what goes into that process?
Okay, well, again, for me, I feel like I've kind of had it easy. I don't know, because I mean, honestly, I think for all of you, if you're business, if you're retail and you have one store, I think I just got it right the very first store, and then it just grew from there. Like if you get it right, if it resonates with people, if it's unique, you know, it's not, you know, there's, you know, even now with all the competition of coffee out there, we're still unique. I think the fact that we skew female really sets us apart, because it's a little bit of, you know, kind of like bro culture. It's almost like the beer, like the craft beer, the roasting and everything. So I think that we skew female. I think the fact that I'm a baby boomer, I'm a mother, our mission statement is the cafe is the people's parliament, and that's a quote by Balzac himself. And we're proud that like nobody gets alienated. And by that I mean we would never play our music so loud that, you know, it would bother you. And I've been in cafes where it's like, you know, or everybody's welcome. Like if you have a stroller, you're welcome. You're not going to feel like daggers or, you know. So we're really proud of that. And like even the youngest, coolest millennials like our brand. It resonates with them. So I don't know. I think we just got it right with the concept, and we evolved. I think that's really important. I think you need to constantly evolve your business, and especially now, people's attention spans seem, there's just so much out there to stimulate us all the time. So we have to almost evolve quicker and constantly. We're constantly thinking of new drinks to add to our menu, which we design all of our own drinks, and new food items, and it's just customers like that. They like to see things constantly new and fresh, and yeah. Did I answer your question there?
Yeah, you did. But actually, you raised another one, because when I think about it, leadership is so important. At the beginning, it's not as important, because it's just kind of you and maybe a few other people. And then you start your store, and you're in your store all the time. Once you get to 14, 18 stores, and inclusion and making people feel welcome is so important. How do you maintain that leadership over that many people? What's the secret?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I lead all those people. These girls can tell you I don't come in here and say, hey, where's your apron, or where's your, I think, it's not, I don't micromanage. I don't have that kind of person. I micromanage if it's an aesthetic thing, like I need it just so with the aesthetics. But I really, I have an amazing team. Like our general manager, he overlooks most of the cafes, and all the managers report to him. And he's just the nicest guy. And I think that's sort of the secret to good leadership, is surround yourself with good people that really do your job for you. Like I was saying to you, and you read it in one of my interviews, when I opened 2 cafes, the second cafe, I realized right away, I can't be both places at once. Therefore, I really shouldn't have to be at either. Both need to run without me. So a lot of times I didn't. Nobody knew where I was. I was just going to the antique stores or whatever. But yeah, they need to survive without you, and you need to empower your team to, I know you do, because, I don't see you, and that's how it should be. We see each other socially and stuff, but her team, they're and they never say, oh, we're gonna have to ask Melissa about that. They're empowered to make their own decisions, and once in a while maybe, but nothing that we've done. So yeah, I think it is, I owe it all to my team, and I guess if I'm gonna take any credit, it was just not micromanaging them and finding good people. Yeah.
How did you learn your leadership style? Did you read books? Did you have mentors? Has it evolved over the years?
I would say my father, he started a business, I think he was 19 in Vancouver. He started a parking company. He sold it in the 80s, but it's now the largest parking company in the world. You probably park there. I do. I have to pay them still. So I wish when he sold it, he got me a lifetime pass or whatever. It's in park. So there, he started it. It was called Imperial Parking, and he used to go and he would lease the lot and put the coin things in, and he'd go every day and gather the change and sweep the lots himself, and he built it up, and then the 80s, the recession hit, and by then he had started a lot of other businesses too, so he sold in part, but good on him. He enjoyed it for many years and sold it, and yeah, so our leadership is very similar. He was loved by his employees. He didn't work too hard. He wasn't a ball buster or whatever you call it. But he held people accountable, and I think also when people like you as a leader and they respect you, they want to do good, right? They want to make you happy, and then and then they get rewarded, and that's just how it works. Yeah. So I've worked before Balzac's. I've worked for a company. I won't mention the name, but it was a corporation, and it really had like a hierarchy, and all the people at my level in our cubicles were at each other's, none of us got along because it was like this just really bad environment. And that's when I sat on their dime and like designed my logo for Balzac's. Just like wrote out my whole business plan, and then it was like I got the financing for my first little kiosk, and I was like, bye. And not to disrespect corporate jobs, because someone's got to do it. Yeah. It's so true, but I think personality-wise, like entrepreneurs have a certain personality, and we just can't sit still in a cubicle and do that all day. Although sometimes I'm like, I wish I sold one thing, like one thing for one price. And that's all I had to do, because there's just so many moving parts to a business like this. Like, it's just insane, all the things. Especially we got into wholesale. We're now Porter's official coffee on Porter Airlines. We do events. We do, what else do we do? Our product, now we're doing single serve. We're doing cold brew. So our cold brew I'm very excited about. It's insane. So thank God I have a good team. Yeah. So,
how did you evolve? Because it was just coffee at one time. It was one product at one time. So how did that evolution happen? It sounds to me like you get inspired and then things move on, but there must be a process there.
Yeah, I think, like for instance, our Citro Booster, which is lemon, if you haven't tried it, if you ever have a cold. I have one waiting for me somewhere. But it's lemon, oh God, I'm drawing a blank here. It's lemon and ginger, fresh squeezed lemon and ginger with maple syrup, turmeric, and cayenne. And I kind of made that, it was like, I don't know if you remember that fast where you drink lemon and maple syrup, and so I put that together with like a turmeric thing that a friend of mine used to make, and we did that 20 years ago. So, and now those things are really popular. So, and same with like chai. Like we made our own chai way back then before it became. So a lot of times I'm like looking at, like through travel, looking at drinks that are popular in other countries. Now it's such a global thing, and people are sharing on Instagram. So now I can't keep up. It's like charcoal latte, and but yeah, we started skewing a little bit away from coffee in the cafes because people are more healthy now, and teas have become much more popular. Matcha. So we're still, first and foremost, we're a coffee company. We're very proud of our coffee, and I drink coffee in the mornings. And I love our coffee, but there's lots of other, and that's the good thing about a cafe is, I've had people say to me, oh, I've never been to your cafe because I don't drink coffee. And I'm like, oh, we don't make you drink coffee. There's plenty of other things. You got to come and just have a glass of water. I don't know. But I can see a lot of coffee drinks here, though. That's good. A lot of coffee drinkers. But
yeah, in Waterloo we drink a lot of Kitchener Waterloo. We drink a lot of coffee. It's like our culture. Yeah, it is.
European roots. So yeah.
So, but I also want to hear about, this is pretty new, some of the well, they're beautiful, and I think we're giving them away later, too. Yeah, talk to me about that because it was an absolutely new endeavor for you, and so I want to hear how you got inspired.
So the wallpaper, if you see, I had read about this woman out in Prince Edward County who designs wallpaper, and I saw her in like Canadian House and Home or something. They had a little write-up, and I contacted her and I said, would you be interested in custom designing a wallpaper for Balzac's? And she was just this lovely, lovely lady. She's from England. She's got the most adorable accent. And she knew Balzac's, and she said she would love to. So we talked about, the cost, and I was like, wow, what a great deal. And so she went to the Kingston Cafe, which is the closest to Prince Edward County, sat there and came up with this pattern. And it was like, I didn't say anything about the company. I didn't say any of the things that represent us. And you'll see in there's a coffee plant. There's a French biggin, which I appreciate because of the French inspiration. There's a quill pen with a little ink bottle, pens, that Balzac himself wrote with a quilt pen, so she's referencing the name and the history. There's the espresso portafilter going with a cup of espresso. There's a little terracotta plant with succulent in it. So she nailed it, like first try, the colors and everything. So we started using the wallpaper in just not in all the walls, but just in little areas in the cafes. And then I said, why don't you do like a mug or whatever? And we worked together and did this capsule collection, which you're all gonna get a little bit of. We ordered it through Danica, and the minimums were so huge. I've got a 6-year supply of this stuff. So if you guys could help me sell it, I'd much appreciate it. But it's so beautiful, and her husband is Johnny C. Lamb. He's like a really famous photographer if you're into photography, and they've become good friends of mine. So yeah. So and we're gonna do this again. We're going to feature different artists, and I just love the idea of letting them go to a Balzac's and me not suggesting anything, just do something, do a surface pattern of what your take on Balzac's was, and then we'll do a capsule collection with it. Maybe different, we were experimenting with tea towels and things like that, but yeah, so it's fun. That's the fun part of my job, is to work collaboratively with artists. Always I try with local artists, doing our posters. Yeah, although she lives in the States, but I found her online, but she's wonderful. Yeah, so I'm very blessed with what I get to do for a living. It's fun.
Well, and it's changed a little bit too. So I mean, you're the founder, always will be, but now you're moving into more of a creative role. How do you feel about that, and how did you know it was the right time?
I'm thrilled about it, to be honest. So I just hired a CEO. I'll say the first official CEO of Balzac's, but really I was the first CEO. I just never called myself a CEO. All of you women, if you own your own business, you should call yourself a CEO. That should be, you're the chief executive officer. Yeah, but don't be afraid to call yourself a CEO, because it really it means the person who's basically running the company. And so I knew that we were we were growing exponentially, and I knew we had more cafes coming up, and I was starting to not be able to spend the time doing the creative stuff. And I don't know how to scale a company, to be perfectly honest, because a lot of it is, it's procurement stuff and buying with coffee. It's hedging on buying the beans and all that stuff. And I was kind of I don't, and I'm 56. Like, I don't want to go back to school at this point and learn how to do that stuff. So I was like, I need help. Arlene, who is the major investor in Balzac's, agreed. And we both together we searched for a CEO. We ended up hiring a guy, Ron Cecilon, and it's interesting because he is a guy. And I was saying to Melissa, like, I've caught him a couple times, you know, like just not maybe valuing so much the fact that the company is skewing feminine, but he's amazing, and he's there to learn, and he really respects me, and he's really good at his job. And now I'm seeing, like, oh, that's how you know, I think I do a good job with the people in the company and making the beautiful cafes, but I'm realizing now, like, he's just tweaking things here and there, and it's like, oh, you know, he just saved me $100,000 over a year by just tweaking that little thing. And when you get this big, like, those little things, they really add up. So yeah, and he really believes in culture. Like, that's why we hired him. He believes in really rewarding your team, and I believe in that too, but I just really haven't had the time or even know how to do that. Like, so he's like doing an overhaul on everything from the baristas to the head office, and just making it more so we're all connected, and he's really into that. So I'm excited. And now I'm Chief Design Officer, so how fun is that? Yeah.
So what do you get to do all day? Yeah.
Oh.
What does your new job mean?
What do I do all day? Well, we're opening 4 cafes this year, possibly 4 cafes and 1 kiosk. And one's in Vaughan, in case you want to know, Vaughan Metropolitan Center. And then Kleinberg, we're opening one, and another one right across from the Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto on Carleton College. Good Carleton location. Or College? Yeah, it's and they're all spaces that I went in and went, yeah, I can do something here. So, and then another one on the Danforth. So that one's not signed yet, but it looks like we'll be doing that. So I'm going to have my hands full just as the designer for these cafes. I'm not a trained designer. I still hire an architect that does all the drawings and all that, but I do all of the layout and the finishes and things like that. So I'm going to be busy, and yeah, and I mean, who knows, next year, if we're doing 4 or 5 this year, we might try 10 next year. Like, we could possibly do that. So we'll see. Yeah.
25 years ago, did you see this? Like, sometimes, you know, when you start your company, you're like, oh, one day it could be this. Did you believe that this could happen?
I didn't really think about it. I didn't not believe it could happen. I really...
The Canadian Starbucks, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't think I wanted, because I pictured that being very sort of, it would have to be like a franchise, or it would and I didn't want to do that. So, and we don't want to do that. Like, I think, you know, we could possibly go to 100 or 150 across Canada, but that's nothing compared to some of these other companies. And we aren't going to franchise. And if I'm going to make them all different, that's a lot of cafes. And then I have to come back, and the ones that are like need a refresh, I have to, you know, it's going to be busy. I'm going to need an assistant with this for sure. But yeah, yeah. And no, I didn't. We grew very organically. So just opportunities came, and some I said no to, but some I was like, oh, this is cool. Like the distillery. I had my cafe in Stratford, and the landlords or owners of the distillery, one of them, his wife was from Stratford, so she knew of Balzac's. They approached me, and I was the first business open at the distillery district, and now it's like this huge international, like, it's one of the top 10 places for historic districts. So what was my point there? Yeah, that just fell in my lap, really, and I just couldn't say no. I was terrified, but I went and saw the building, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm not going to do this. So I've kind of grown just without going out and finding things. But now with Ron, he's like, oh no, well, his main thing is, he says, I like to grow things, and I also like to have a plan. So that's so different from the way I've done it. So, because I'm like, oh, let's just see what happens next year. And he's like, no, we need a budget. We need to know where we're going to get the money. We need to know how many, and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. So, yeah, the organically growing thing is probably not going to be, but we're also not going to be like kind of aggressive and go like into every strip mall, and like I just don't want to become that brand that gets super diluted and loses the DNA that built the company. So that's also my job. I see my job as the guardian of the brand, because a lot of times investors will just be like, why don't you sell in Walmart, or why don't you, and there's a reason why we don't do that. No offense to people that do, because, that can be a really great, value proposition, but when it has to be at the right time. And, and I'm not saying that we won't someday, but, we're just trying to be careful and not sort of be go down in the history books as a company that lost itself, and kind of, because that happens.
It does. I'm pretty confident. I'm actually very confident that you've got the brands back. Yeah.
Now, we also wanted to do a little 15-minute ask me anything, but it's not me, it's Deanna. So does anyone have a question that they'd like to ask? I can keep going. So if you want to think of a question, I'll ask one more, and then I'll come back to the audience, so get your questions going. Okay, I love that the People's Parliament. So tell me a little bit about what that means to you and how you like to see it showcased in your cafes.
Yeah, it really makes me happy when I go into a cafe and I see a group of elderly people over here, some kids over here, some students over here, some business people over here. That term originated because historically cafes were a place, so back in Paris, let's just say, for example, newspapers back at that time were affiliated with political parties. So each party had their own newspaper, a political newspaper. And they still do. Yeah. They skew, yeah. So, but at that time, people didn't get their news delivered to their door, or it wasn't available at every store. So they would go to cafes. I think you've all seen those sticks, those wooden sticks that they draped all the newspaper in all the cafes in Paris. So the cafe was a place where everybody went and got their news, and the cafe never associated itself with a party. The cafe was the place where everybody is welcome, and then they would debate, right? Like you get people talking about, or fighting sometimes. I've read some crazy stories where a lot of historic moments have gone down in some of these cafes. So I love that. But now it's to me that's more just, it's the People's Parliament where all walks of society are not only welcome there, but you can feel the excitement that I'm not just here in this place with people that look like me. Like, we're not navel gazing here. We're sharing and we're opening ourselves up and connecting with people that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise connect to, even if it's just sitting next to them and maybe overhearing a conversation or whatever, And I don't mind when people come in alone and just work on their, I do that. I love that. I do it not necessarily in my own cafes, but I go to other cafes and just be anonymous in the corner and work. And it's cafes have a great place in society, and I really mean that. And I feel like even with recessions and stuff, cafes, like I'm in a good business. Cafes are never going to go away. Because you don't have to come in here and spend a lot of money. You can just buy like a small brewed coffee if you're watching your dollars. And I know people say, like, financial advisors, they always say, just if you just cut your coffee out, you'd save. Da-da-da. But it's so much more. You're getting so much more out of it by just going and sitting and relaxing, or having they call it the third place or whatever, somewhere that's not home, not work. And especially in Ontario with our weather. And so I think I picked a good business to be in. And bars are a great place too, but I'm glad I picked the coffee, not the bars and restaurants. My husband is still in the bar business, so yeah, I couldn't handle that part, but yeah.
There's what is it? WFH, so what everyone writes, working from home. So you could start at Balzac's, WFB, working from Balzac's, right? Okay, who's got a question? Yes. Oh, tell us about the Dragon's Den experience. Great question.
Yeah. So a lot of times on the Dragon's Den, it's like really new businesses. And when I auditioned, I was actually looking for money. I had the banks, I'd tapped out what they were willing to give me. And I had 2 cafes, great opportunities. One was Ryerson University and one was the Toronto Reference Library. And I had signed those leases, and I had no clue where I was going to get the money from, because the banks had already lent me money for 2 before that. So I knew at that time I'm going to have to sell some shares in the company and get investment money. And I'd never done that. So my brother, who was like a Dragon's Den fan, said, "You should go in the Dragon's Den." And I'm very competitive, and when he sort of set it as a challenge, and so I thought, why not? And first of all, you audition and you don't necessarily make it, and you can always back out even. So I, one step at a time, I went to the audition. Anyways, somehow I found myself on the show, and they went pretty easy on me. In fact, I would say the editors were really kind in the way that, yeah, like, it's weird because you sign like some pretty heavy stuff. Like they can like really go hard at you and say some awful things if they want. Like you sign away any ability to defend yourself if they make you look like an idiot on TV. But I kind of knew they weren't going to do that with me because my business was already established. But it's a pretty mean show. Like sometimes, I really feel bad for some people, and sometimes they go overboard. And Arlene can be pretty mean sometimes too. Sorry, I love Arlene, but no, she's she doesn't suffer fools, and she doesn't on that show. And like I said, they signed up for it, so I'm not criticizing her. But they were nice to me. They were very kind to me. And I did get the investment. Bruce Croxon and Arlene invested. And then eventually Bruce sold his shares because he wanted to just concentrate on tech. He sold his shares to Arlene. And then just over a year ago, I sold Arlene's District Ventures, her thing. I sold more of my own shares because I wanted to buy a house. So I bought my dream house and renovated it and am loving it. And so she's my partner. Yeah, she's great. And her team, including her daughter, and yeah, they're great.
Would you do Dragon's Den again?
Oh,
If you could go back and tell yourself, Diana, don't do this.
No, I would definitely do it. I think it did, they aired that episode a lot, and then they did follow-ups, and so it really kind of probably really helped us out on the West Coast, because we sell our coffee in grocery all across Canada now. I think it definitely helped. It helps get your foot in the door. So it was a good experience. And being on TV is kind of fun, like the whole seeing how it all happens in the back. I was so nervous, like, oh my God, I was so nervous. It didn't really come across, but I was so nervous. Somehow I pulled it off.
I'm just going to try to repeat it so that everybody at the back can hear. No, that's okay. I've got a mic. So you've built your brand within your company, and you're asking how does she build her brand outside of the company, as well as a woman, as well as an owner? How do you take yourself and continue to grow as a woman, as an entrepreneur? Yeah, your next investment, I guess, really, right?
Yeah. Well, I do invest in a couple other companies that I also can sort of be an advisor with. So, but that's more Diana. That's not the Balzac's brand. And I have I'm not sure I understand the question, but there's. How do you grow as a woman? How do I? Well, I think it's really. Yeah. Well, I feel it's really, really important. I know when you start out, you have to pull those long hours and everything, but it's really important to have a life outside of your work, because you're not doing your job any favors. You're not doing your company any favors if you're not taking care of yourself health-wise. I have a lot of yeah. It's so true. Balzac's does not define me at all. And ask my family and my friends, we barely, well, I talk a lot about work with my husband because he owns a business too, but I have a lot of hobbies and interests outside of Balzac's, and family and I even want to start my own. I'm starting to dabble in making jewelry. Like, my mother was a jeweler, and I'm gonna inherit her whole workshop, she says, when she passes. And so I thought, well, I better start learning how to make jewelry now if I'm gonna get the whole workshop. So it's weird, eh? Kind of a weird conversation to have with your mom, but it was like, okay, I'll take it, so that's my answer to that. But as far as the brand of Balzac's, when you pull away, you can put protections into place. Like, I'm still, I was saying, I'm the guardian of the brand, and there's always going to be that friction between, or tension, I guess, more than friction, between the investment side and the growing side, and then me saying, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like Balzac's. That doesn't. So I still, even though I'm not working on the day-to-day business operations, I'm still protecting the brand, and I'm still on the board of directors. So I still get to, the CEO reports to me, even though I report to him as creative director, but then he reports to me as the board, on the board. So yeah, protecting is important. Well, thank you. I do have, they're not like official mentors, so to speak, but I do have people. My dad passed away, unfortunately, a few years back, but he was my number one, like, every day, talking to him. My mom, not so much, because she's an artist, and she's. I take after her too, yeah. But Bruce Croxon, he's still, like, Arlene for sure, but she's in the business, so it's good to have someone outside of the business that you go to. And now that Bruce isn't an investor, he's amazing. Yeah, there's several people. My husband, he's been in, like, he started restaurants and bars. Now he owns a brewery, and so he gets sort of the stresses and all that. But I would say, like, listen to yourself. Like, you know, you can get, all businesses are different. All people, their style of doing business is different. And I've had a lot of people I look up to say I should do something in a certain way, but it didn't sit right with me, and I didn't do it. And I was so glad that I didn't. Like, really, really listen to yourself, because you just twist yourself into a pretzel if you're taking advice from people. And people give you advice even if they really know what they're talking about. If you ask for it, they're going to give it to you, right? They're going to answer the question, but they might not actually know the best thing. And so it's good to have that, and it's good to ask more than one person if you're considering a big move in your business. Get different points of view, and then, you know, let it sort of speak to you and inform you, but don't make a decision based on other people's advice. You know, really listen to yourself. You know, wear your bit proudly. Like, it's actually called being assertive, right? You know, I learned this from my dad, that you have to be, you don't want to be aggressive, but you have to be assertive. And for some reason in women, when we're assertive, it's considered aggressive. It's not ladylike, but we're actually just being assertive. We're not being aggressive. And so that's just something, if you need to be, like, you know, you don't want to be a person who's constantly having to be assertive. But once in a while, you need to stand up for yourself or for your employee or whatever. And yeah, that's just, it's, yeah, I'm sure I've been called a bit, for sure, many times. But whatever, I'm just like doing what I need to do to protect my turf and my business. And hey, men do it all the time. Like, you know, they don't sort of get the same, you know, I don't know, what do you call a man? Like, what's a male version of a bitch? Just a man. I guess something, I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. That's something. That's a word that I think women need to appropriate and make it a. Thank you for calling me a bitch. I'm complimented by that.
Well, thank you so much, Diana. This has been amazing. Thank you to all of you amazing women leaders who came out today.